budgetfutures.com has been created to serve people who have noticed lately that their budgets have shifted in the last few years, perhaps quite surprisingly. So Budget Futures is about the opportunity to notice in advance developing changes in economics and investment markets, investment behavior trends, and in budgets. To notice in advance what is emerging and developing in the budgets of households, businesses, industries, governments, corporations, etc. So to notice in advance what's developing and then to benefit from the changes that are developing rather than suffer detriment and loss from the same changes. So I could say a little bit about my background. I also want to just raise several questions. In speaking about my background, I could comment on my own changing experiences with budgets, right, personally. But lots of people have had changes in their budgets at various times, surprising changes, sometimes very pleasant surprises, sometimes challenges. In my own case, I'm not all that much different from anyone else, I assume, in regard to having experienced some favorable things with my budget and some not so favorable things. But one thing that's quite distinct about me is myself and several other people forecast some of the major changes that were developing 8 years ago, 7 years ago, and now, or by 2005, 2008, 2010, or 11, now people are becoming aware in large numbers of some of the same changes that I was drawing attention to in 2003, 2004, and since then, all along. So there are adjustments that people can make so that they have more security, more prosperity, more clarity, more peace of mind about the future of their budgets and the future of their finances. So that's the really short version. I'm going to say some more, though. But at this point, if you already recognize that you would like to contact me, I'm going to tell you you can call me at 480-265-5522. That's a direct line to me. So here's some background questions that might be useful for you if you're considering whether to contact me or not. Are emerging economic changes important yet to you, to your budget, and to your future? Are you more alert? Are you more alert to possible economic changes than you were a few years ago? Are you more alert now to possible economic changes in the near future than you were a few years ago? Are you more attentive? Are you more interested? Have you noticed that the overall economy influences your budget and your personal finances? And how have you noticed that the overall economy influences your business and your personal finances? In what ways? How much have just gasoline prices alone changed your budget? How early do you want to know about emerging economic trends and business trends? Years before? Months before? A year later? A month later? A day later? Do you already know any ex-millionaires who are now bankrupt? I do. Many people have found recently that they may have underestimated the influence of economic change on their personal finances and their business, resulting in a flood of complaining, hopeful interventions, blaming, and conflict. Many have also experienced decreased revenues, foreclosure, bankruptcy, as well as natural consequences for their health and relationships. So, Budget Futures isn't just about your finances. It's about everything in your life that's related to your finances, as well as just your financial security and your financial prosperity. But financial security and financial prosperity are tremendously valuable because of the other things in life that financial prosperity gives us access to. So we may already know about issues in distant foreign nations like Libya, Greece, Ireland, and Egypt, or in nearby Mexico, nearby to where I am. We may have also heard about similar issues in California, and Minnesota, Nevada, and New Jersey, or maybe not similar issues, but issues of some distinction, not the same as we were hearing about 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, or even 5 years ago. There's some new stuff going on. New attention also on the issue of economic change and economic trends. So again, I knew years in advance about the coming decline in the financial stability of many governments, businesses, and households. I knew years in advance about the future of investment market changes, like in real estate, and stocks and commodities, like oil and gas in particular. How? I knew in advance by carefully studying the past and then closely monitoring the present at regular, frequent intervals. So ongoingly, I would monitor the present and also modify my my understanding of the overall picture. In 2003, when I first noticed that there was some shift in the lending and borrowing behaviors, and I knew the implications for real estate prices, and I understood part of the situation as it relates to the U.S. economy and other economies and stock prices for the U.S. So I knew by 2003 that the kinds of things that happened in 2008 were ripe. But in 2003, I didn't have as full an understanding as I do today, or even as I did in 2004, 2005. In 2004, I published The Real U.S. Deficit Oil. In 2005, worth its weight in oil. And naturally, with those two publications, I added a focus on energy, fossil fuels, oil in particular, as a useful point of reference in understanding what was going on worldwide as well as in the U.S., given that the U.S. is so dependent on oil, in particular importing foreign oil, because the U.S. is, I think, currently the third largest producer of oil in the world. But we use virtually all the oil that we produce in the U.S. is used here in the U.S. So we are by far the biggest importer of oil in the world, largely because of all the wealth we accumulated when we were the #1 producer of oil in the world. At least consider that that's a factor. Anyway, so how I knew about things in advance was by carefully studying the past and then closely monitoring the present, ongoingly, right? I also focused on other researchers who were similarly attentive and adaptive. So I could list several of them, including one from Columbia University who cited one of my articles in her 2006 graduate research. And there's a link. If you have the link available, you can click it and look for what's it called? The biography. I think at the end it lists some of the sources. And there's actually footnotes that are specific to the quotation she was taking from my work. So beginning in 2003, I published articles on the future and gave public talks. So by 2003, I was clear. Even in 2002, I just hadn't published yet, but in 2002, I was clear about the developing shift in lending and borrowing patterns and the implications for real estate prices in the U.S. and elsewhere, as well as the future of oil and gasoline prices that came a little later, and their effect on the U.S. economy and U.S. stock markets. Again, as I already said, in 2004, I published The Real U.S. Deficit Oil, and in 2005, Worth Its Weight in Oil. Not only was I making reference then to oil prices, but also gasoline prices, given that gasoline is refined from oil. So as oil became more and more expensive, predictably, gasoline became more and more expensive, predictably reaching prices in Europe of over $10 a gallon, converting into U.S. dollars, the equivalent of over $10 per gallon in parts of Europe in 2008. Now prices came down considerably since then, but they are coming back up for gasoline as well as for oil. Not surprising to many researchers that gasoline and oil prices have returned back towards their previous all-time highs a couple years ago in 2008. So in 2005 and 6 and other years, I've consulted privately with successful businessmen, and many of them followed other people's recommendations, not mine, but a few followed my unusual suggestions. Many of them kept doing what they'd been doing before with their budgets, and when economic changes came to prominence, those budgetary choices proved quite unfavorable. And the few who followed my unusual suggestions, they had much better results. The difference in their results were enormous, in fact. A few people who were eager to invest in real estate in 2005 chose not to speculate in real estate after consulting with me, and one was even a realtor. They're not upside down now on mortgages, like so many other people. Some even experienced exceptional gains by focusing on more rewarding opportunities than flipping real estate. If you think that the gains from flipping real estate are fantastic, and they were in certain places and times, they really were great. You could put $10,000 down and have in a couple years an extra $100,000 or $200,000 just on 10% down, things like that. Well, there are more attractive opportunities than even those. And of course, real estate markets did not continue to offer those opportunities, but other markets did. And that is one of my specialties in determining which markets are ripe to surge and which markets are ripe to reverse, such as decline. Or if they're coming down, which ones are ripe to reverse and begin to rise from a period of discounting where they're now going to be valued more and more highly. So others didn't do as well as those folks who avoided all that real estate equity loss and the potential for bankruptcy and so forth that went along with that. Others ignored my warnings, including successful business people, even millionaires. They ignored my warnings and lost all of their real estate equity, or at least much of it. In some cases, not all, but only much of it. Some were able to exit after losing only $100,000 or $200,000 in equity. Others suffered foreclosures or even bankruptcies. At least one millionaire who chose not to heed my recommendations soon lost his business, his marriage, and his health. He quickly went from being a millionaire business owner to being bankrupt and unemployed. So, again, staggering difference in results there, you might say. You may not know yet how much you're going to value having access now to competent financial analysis and advanced alerts about emerging opportunities and risks. I could tell you, though. Wouldn't you like to know now? Again, I invite you to just directly give me a call. You'll leave a voicemail for me or I'll answer. I'm JR. My number is 480-265-5522. Thank you for your interest.